the hyperbaric chamber stuff. I go into one, and I was like, what did you think? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Unless you have the bends or a wound, I wouldn't recommend it. Oh,
Right,
I get
right.
tired. I was like, you don't need more oxygen. Just breathe.
It is on.
Hi, everyone. Today I'm talking to Dr. Eric Topol, a cardiologist and researcher at Scripps who's an expert in longevity. I wanted to talk to him because I actually have a new series coming out on CNN called Swisher Wants to Live Forever, which I focus on experts like Dr. Topol. It's really important in this time of pseudoscience and grifters, including the head of the HHS, Robert Kennedy Jr., who knows nothing except, yes, we should eat whole foods. He is correct about that. That we talk to experts because there's all these astonishing, amazing inventions happening in the healthcare space, which are being made lesser because of all this nonsense that's going on online, elsewhere, and all the charlatans. It's important that there are real breakthroughs in anti-aging and not just the hype. And so if you're interested in that, this interview is for you. So stick around. Dr. Topol, thank you so much for coming on.
Great to be with you, Kara.
So in your latest book, Super Agers, you write that we're at a unique moment in medicine where we've seen a, quote, historic convergence of breakthroughs, end quote, particularly around anti-aging science. I could not agree more. After a year of reporting on this is exactly the conclusion I came to, except a lot of it is being masked by a lot of nonsense at the same time, which probably happened the last time we had this happen. But briefly walk us through the most significant breakthroughs and explain how they've converged, because this moment in anti-aging science is different than where we were 10 to 15 years ago.
Exactly. It is really a turning point. The science of aging is where we made these big strides. So there's a lot of noise out there, as you well know, but the signal is that we can quantify aging and understand the biology much better. So, for example, we now have these organ clocks so that within our body, we can tell if our brain is aging differently than our immune system and our heart and arteries and whatnot. So
Mhm.
we didn't have anything like that before. And so we also understand that inflammation, so-called inflammaging, and immunosenescence, the immune system, are big drivers of age-related diseases. So while so many are working on reversing aging, Kara, the real opportunity here is actually accept that we're going to age, but let's squash the age-related diseases since so much understanding has been enhanced.
Talk about each of those things. You talked about immunosenescence. Talk about each of the parts you just talked about. It's essentially knowing how to fix age-related things on parts, correct? Or is that kind of too idiotic way of saying it?
Right, right. We used to think that everything was genetically driven about health span and lifespan, but
And it is in
we've
part for people to
it,
understand.
it is in part, but less than, particularly health span, less than had been previously accepted.
So in the book, you introduce a concept, which I think is an important one, of health span versus lifespan. The goal is to max out our total number of healthy years of life as opposed to solely focusing on
So
longevity.
when we looked at, for example, 1,400 people who were almost 90 and never been sick on no medications, and we looked at their whole genome sequence, we didn't find very much to account for that. But the immune system seems to be the real uh, explanation for many of these people reaching such advanced age, that their immune system has very high integrity. It hasn't lost its protection against cancer, and it also isn't hyperactive, for example, in the artery wall for atherosclerosis or in the brain to promote reaction to these misfolded proteins. So the three big diseases of aging, neurodegenerative, cancers, and cardiovascular, the common thread is that we need an intact immune system, because if we don't, then
Hmm.
we start to see this process of inflammation get unleashed. And when that happens, then these diseases go into an accelerated phase. So even though they take 20 years or more to incubate in our bodies, um, our immune system keeps us healthy. And there's many things, of course, that we can do to promote that, and we got to do even more things in the future. But that's been the biggest breakthrough, to understand that the brain, which is the master command central for the immune system, And the brain and the immune system together are largely accounting for this remarkable health span that we've seen in people.
Now, when you talk about significant breakthroughs, there's a couple. One of them, of course, everyone always asks me, and I'm like, well, friends and family are actually much more important than you think, scientifically and personally. I said, but one of the things is don't be poor and don't be under stress,
Hmm.
right? Don't,
Hmm.
and I don't mean stress as like your husband was mad at you or something, or whatever. You got in a fight with your kids or whatever. It was something else. It was sort of this idea of don't be in situations that stress the immune system in that regard, whether it's by food or by sleep. And I was interviewing one of these billionaires, and he goes, well, if people just slept more, and I was like, well, some people can't because they're poor. Like, you know what I mean? Which is interesting. So maybe stack rank them a little bit for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think what's going to be the biggest, what we start to see now is that uh, AI is going to make it, I think its singular biggest contribution over the years is that it can have remarkable accuracy in prediction 20 years ahead, which leads to prevention of cancers, which
Hmm.
now at best we can detect when they're already cancer. But we're talking now about prevention. The same for Alzheimer's. I mean, we're starting an Alzheimer's trial later this month to
Hmm.
prevent the disease. We've never even thought about that before. And
Right.
also for cardiovascular. So uh, the fact that we have these markers of aging, that we can track the immune system and inflammation. And we have AI to pull all the layers of data for each person. This enables prevention. So that's the future. Everybody's talked about AI in healthcare, but I think that ultimately, of course, not yet, but ultimately it'll turn out to be its singular most important contribution. But otherwise, for example, the biggest breakthrough in neuroscience in decades
Hmm.
has been a marker for Alzheimer's disease, p-tau 217, which tells us even 2 decades ahead that someone is really at high risk, and it's uh, can be modified by exercise and lifestyle improvements, and hopefully medications. Like the GLP-1 drugs have outperformed any expectations, and they have become realistically the most potent way to knock down inflammation in the brain and throughout the body that we know, the safest and most potent. So it has diverse potential to even help us ultimately to prevent
In
these
ways
diseases. Yeah,
which
yeah. So
require more and more
it's
study about it, for how as it moves into the population, which it is at a rapid pace.
absolutely, we've seen it have these weight loss independent effects in heart disease, liver, kidney, and even arthritis, osteoarthritis, psoriatic arthritis. But whether it's going to pan out as a prevention for Alzheimer's disease and prevention of these other age-related diseases
Mhm.
to be the first extending health span drug, that is obviously has to be proven. That's going to take some years ahead.
So, giving the advances in anti-aging medicine, talk about this idea of a health span, because I think what people don't realize is most people spend most of their money in sick care, like not health care,
Yeah, yeah.
the last many years of their lives. And so talk about someone who's healthy at 70. What does that mean? What is the realistic health span in 2026 in certain countries? I've visited Korea because the women there are showing remarkable health spans, which is for lots of different reasons, but they're studying it now. But talk a little bit about what that means, a realistic health span.
Yeah, so the average American has already one of these age-related chronic diseases by 64. So that's the end of their health span. Whereas the average American has a life expectancy, lifespan of 79. So there's a 15-year gap among Americans on average. Of course, many Americans by 64 have multiple chronic diseases. But that 15-year gap is the difference between health span and
Hmm.
lifespan. And that's why when I saw Kara Swisher Wants to Live Forever, I said, well, you got to add
Yeah,
when I'm completely healthy, if I'm
correct.
completely healthy,
I
because
hope you get the joke. How
yeah, no, no,
ridiculous.
I do, but
Yeah.
what we lifespan, we
Hmm.
can keep someone alive on life support for,
Yeah.
forever,
Ever.
but what
Yeah.
kind of life is that?
Right.
So what we
Exactly.
really want is to extend health span, and I think we're on the brink of that, and that's what's exciting is that
Hmm.
preventing age-related diseases will get us
Right.
that extension of health span. We wanna close that gap,
Right.
that when
Right.
people are 80, that they
Right.
lived most of their life healthily.
Standing up, right. I mean, Ezekiel Emanuel, who I interviewed in the show, all talked about that. He goes, if you had to spend the last 15 years of your life in a wheelchair,
Yeah.
debilitated, that's not a life, essentially.
Yes.
It's something else.
Yes.
So you say there's a lot of hype around anti-aging, which you say is misplaced and not aligned with evidence in people. I couldn't agree more. You criticize the longevity lifespan circus, the carnival barker scientists who make, and I'm quoting you, make false claims and hawk supplements. Talk about what this is and who are some of the ringleaders of this longevity lifespan circus. I have worse words for them, but circus works.
Well, this
Grifters
goes
is
for
the word I use,
right,
grifters.
grifters. This is deep. There's so many influencers who have such big impact, and they're selling supplements, expensive supplements like AG1 and claiming, these anti-aging properties that have never been proven. They're also now pushing peptides really heavily, none of which have any data. And they have all sorts of other antics, but of course they're always admixed with some truth. So it's hard for the public to separate that out. And this is, and we have longevity clinics, even at prestigious institutions that are promoting this idea that we can you pay us enough money and we can keep you with extending your lifespan.
Mhm,
So it's all over the place. We even have our HHS secretary as part of
mhm.
this because he's
Oh, well.
promoting peptides. We
Mhm,
have people like Peter Attia,
mhm,
was one of the biggest influencers promoting
mhm,
rapamycin, which
mhm,
has no proof in people,
mhm, mhm.
cold plunges, protein, out of control amount of
Out of
protein.
control. You wrote a
Uh,
great column about that.
Andrew Huberman is another key force of supplements. But I always tell people if you really want to have somebody you can rely on, the first step is that they're not selling something. If they're already hawking something, or, whether it's protein bars or supplements or something anti-aging, because we don't have anything anti-aging, okay, outside of, the healthy lifestyle, which you don't have to market that. But if they are selling something, that's automatic credibility question mark.
Right, question mark, and especially just drill down just very briefly on peptides. It's the latest one. The last test was 14 people. Like, there isn't tests on this stuff, and also the danger of using mixed compounded things that you just the sepsis issues are alone are problematic, but
Oh,
talk a
yeah,
little bit about this.
you've touched on a couple of these things. So first of all, right now, most of these are from China. There are some compounding labs in the US that are also questionable, but if you actually analyze what people are getting as one of these peptides, 20% of them have all sorts of impurities or are not even the peptide that they're purported to be. As you mentioned, they might not be sterile, and you're getting these into your bloodstream. So people think, I'm just putting it under the skin. No, it's getting into your bloodstream through the capillary network. So it's a very dangerous thing to self-inject when there's no proof of safety or of any efficacy that is helping. So it's a misplaced trust, and it's also a tremendous amount of confirmation bias, Kara, because these are very expensive. So
Mhm.
when you take these injections, and some of them are taking stacks of peptides, why would it not work? You've paid so much money. You must feel better from that, right? So there's just it's just so sad to see these promoted, and now we even have the idea that the FDA is going to take away the ban. The ban was appropriate on these unregulated peptides. We're not
Right.
talking about
I mean, the
GLP-1
complaint they
peptides, right?
right. No, no, no. I
I'm
think that
talking
the
about all the
complaint
others.
they make is that, oh, it's the FDA trying to keep this from us secretly, which is also part of a plot. Now, when you talk about this, what do you think the biggest problem with these sort of circuses are? I mean, is it that they can reach people more quickly? Is it the new social media environment? I mean, this has gone on since Ponce de Leon. Like, let's be clear. Kellogg's was started as sort of a scheme of cereal,
Right,
like, right?
right.
So it's not a new, and it's not an American phenomenon either, by the way. But
Yeah, well, but that's because concurrent to all this, noise and grifters and whatnot, there has been a big push in the biotech world to try to reverse aging, and there are very intriguing science approaches. like, for example, the so-called cellular reprogramming or the senolytics, stem cells. And so there are some real science
Correct.
initiatives that are exciting.
CRISPR. Hmm.
They look good in, rodents and mice and
Hmm.
rats. We have no data in people, and there's some dangers about going forward in people. But the point is, so that has helped to take this into center stage. So
Hmm.
you have some real science, then you have the pseudoscience marketing stuff, and then you have this other area that I'm most enthusiastic about, which let's just not try to reverse aging so much because it may not ever work. There's a lot we can do right now just
To
to,
have a better
yeah,
life that is longer anyway. So talk about the upper limits of health span and what age at which biology wins and the human body starts to break down, no matter how good medicine gets. I mean, Scott Galloway, we always joke biology is undefeated so far on this planet. So you studied in 2008 the welderly, or people who are at least 80 who have never been sick or had a chronic illness. As you noted, more than 90% of Americans over 65 have at least one chronic disease. So talk a little about the upper limit of this which you're trying to do here.
yeah. I mean, I think the upper limit is we can certainly get most people, we should be uh, uh, pushing towards everyone being a super ager as defined by 85 plus, without cancer, without cardiovascular disease, and without any neurodegenerative disease. That's what we should aspire to achieve. We may not get, way beyond that on average. There will be people like Lee Russell, the patient of mine in the book, who just is about to celebrate her 100th birthday, totally intact. But even if we get to most people at 85 with intact health span, we've made, you can see that through now. You can
Yeah,
see that that's a
the
possible
cost savings are
goal.
enormous too.
Oh
But
gosh, if you don't have people with Alzheimer's and the treatment for cancer, just as you say, Kara, the economic burden
mhm,
is just, ginormous. And
mhm,
so no less the health burden. So that's what we should be pushing on. You can see that this is achievable in the years ahead.
mhm.
It all starts with the prevention. So today, everything is treat, treat, treat. We have to go into prevent, prevent, prevent. And we never really had the way to do that before. That's what's really new here.
So, talk about the key findings when we think about aging genetics. A study published earlier this year in the journal Science suggests that longevity appears to be about 50% heritable. If genes can reveal more about aging, how does that shift the focus on longevity research and ultimately impact what research is funded? If the
Yeah.
FDA is,
So,
dicking around on peptides, which they are,
right.
um, what
All
is
right.
what is the what is most important to be focused in on when you're thinking about this welderly population?
Yeah, so the genetics of health span is very different than the genetics of lifespan. Because if you have those 15 years, that gap, and you're incapacitated one way or another, that's your genetics. Maybe it has 50%. But the health span, as we've studied in others, has a lesser genomic role because a lot of that depends on your lifestyle. And so that is really one of the essential things, which we don't do enough. And hopefully, when we have individualized forecasting, we'll do much better because then the person realizes that, in the, before we could say, well, you're at risk for something, but we could never say when. So, it could risk for Alzheimer's when you're 66 or when you're 99. There's a big difference. Now we can say when. That's a huge difference. And when we tell a person when, who's receptive, they may actually start really getting on a lifestyle kick. Of course, which is not just diet, exercise, and sleep. There's many other factors, as you well
Right,
know. So
right.
that's the beginning of a prevention story, is when you can forecast accurately, individually,
So they can take
20.
time to do it. It's like savings for college or anything else. So we've known for a long time that, as you said, factors like diet, exercise, sleep play a big role in long and healthy life. And actually, I say that people are like, yeah, it's not the most important. It's a combination of all of them. You've expanded. I mean, to an extent. Don't eat fried foods and don't not sleep. Like, welcome to Donald Trump. But you've expanded the concept to what you call lifestyle plus to include
Right.
other factors. So talk about, you write about the often overlooked heavy influence of big food in our health, ultra processed foods, the only thing I think both of us agree with Robert Kennedy Jr. on, but that's kind of a duh kind of thing. So talk about, let's start with that. Talk about the big food and ultra processed foods first.
Yeah, so this is a big part because bad food intake or beverages can promote inflammation and also knock down our immune system. So we have to pay a lot more attention to that. And America is the highest consumption of ultra processed foods. And acknowledging that not all ultra processed foods are bad, but within that group, there are some that are really noxious that really rev up inflammation in our bodies. So we want to minimize those. And there's things that we could do to change that American diet to make it healthy, and it doesn't align with what changes have been made
Right.
recently.
So it is up to the individuals to avoid ultra processed food, or should there be legislation and regulation to curb the abundance of ultra processed food in our diets?
Yeah, so big food is, of course, in command here, and it seems to be beholden to the Department of Agriculture, and our government has really not done enough to take it on, of course, has tremendous lobbying power. But what we want to get out there is that we know the diets that are anti-inflammatory, that are Mediterranean and plant-based, of low red meat content, try and eradicate the harmful group within ultra-processed food. So getting that out without the distortion that we're seeing, currently is important. Animal protein overall is not our best source of protein, and also don't want to overdose on protein because
Hmm.
if you take too much of that in, particularly animal derived, you're going to promote inflammation too. So
Hmm.
the balance of food is really important, and we're way off as
Yeah.
a
I,
country.
I went to, the reason I went to Korea is because I went to a school where they were feeding the kids astonishing lunch.
Mm,
There
mm,
was rice, of course, but there was also fermented foods, miso, healthy proteins, tofu, miso. You couldn't
yeah,
believe what these kids were eating, and they learned
yeah.
from an early. Now they do eat junk food too, but it's a really interesting basis for how. And then every school had a nutritionist that put whole apples. It was really quite something to watch, like
Yeah,
in
why
terms
aren't
of
we doing this? That's
well,
exactly what should be done. Yes.
right, exactly. But moving on from food, in the book you reference a quote, outspoken 47-year-old centimillionaire taking over
Right,
110
right.
supplement pills a day. I think I know who you're talking about. New research suggests the roughly $209 billion global market for dietary supplements is projected to double by 2033. It's also very lightly regulated. Talk about why so many people are convinced that vitamins and supplements are effective ways to increase their health span. Now, let me just say some are good for you, but often, like, for example, someone was eating a fish oil, supplement, and they're like, "Kara, what do you think of this?" I'm like, "It's fine, but eat a piece of fish would
Right,
be
right.
a better choice." Like,
Yes.
I guess if you're not eating fish, and it's not a bad supplement necessarily, but and there's a couple that are probably a good idea. Let's talk a little bit about that because they get mixed in with the ones that aren't.
The supplement part is really where the gaps are. The vitamins, I mean, if you include something like a multivitamin, which has at least some randomized trial data, a bit, it doesn't have a big effect in older people, but it has at least a small benefit. But when you get into the supplement side, unless you have a deficiency, if you're a healthy person and you have a good diet, as you alluded to, you're better off to get those uh, things from your diet, from your normal intake, than you'd have to take a lot of omega-3 fish oil supplements to get what you could get in your diet. If you just concentrate on the right diet, that takes out the supplement story, and
Hmm.
you save a lot of money.
Hmm. Are there any supplements you think are worthwhile besides multivitamin, which I think most maybe not is what I've
Well, the
come to the
one that's
conclusion.
gotten so much play in recent times is creatine. And creatine, the only data that really exists that's solid is that if you work out, you do a lot of strength resistance training, it'll reduce muscle soreness afterwards. But beyond that, does it help the brain function or other things? We don't know. The data are inconclusive. So that one has lots of attention. People are all on this creatine kicks, high dose creatine. There's
Right.
just
No,
nothing to
no,
support it.
I do a creatine after I work out. That's the that's the only thing I use it for. And one people are like, "Oh, you're taking it." And I said, only for that. Like, I don't think it's gonna solve my 20 what's interesting about the supplements is they think it's gonna solve 20 other problems, right?
Right,
I'm like,
right.
it's Good for that. Or someone was, the hyperbaric chamber stuff. I go into one, and I was like, what did you think? I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Unless you have the bends or a wound, I wouldn't recommend it. Oh,
Right,
I get
right.
tired. I was like, you don't need more oxygen. Just breathe. Like, it was really interesting, and I did it on purpose to say
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
fucking ridiculous, even if it's, same thing. A lot of them, all of them. I did a cold plunge. I'm like, it's fun, I guess, or a sound. I did a
Oh,
sound
that
thing.
that's a stress test for heart disease.
That's correct.
You
That's
get
you could.
your blood vessels totally constrict, and if
Mhm.
you have
Uh,
atherosclerosis in your
you're
arteries of your
fucked.
heart,
Yes.
yeah. So
Yes.
to advocate things like that with no
Mhm.
data, particularly where there's danger, it's great that you're on this because
Mhm.
you'll have the anti-influencer
Yes,
impact.
that's what I am. I'm the opposite. But some of them, like, if you have work out a lot, creatine, sure, sure, why
Yeah,
not?
I
Like,
don't
or a
have a problem with that.
multivitamin, you're not getting enough fish, sure. Like,
Right.
that
But
sounds good.
But the thing that gets me, Kara, is they just making up doses of it. So, they'll say, "Oh, take 3 times the normal creatine," and then it'll do all these other no, because show me the
More means
data.
better. Yeah.
Yeah,
More
yeah.
means better. So you include environmental toxins, which I think is important in the lifestyle plus, which include factors like air pollution and microplastics. You write, it was one thing to document the pervasive presence of microplastics in our air and water, but another to find it in our arteries, brains, blood clots, liver, gut, lung, placentas, testicles, and other tissues. So talk about for the solution for regular people who don't have time and money to live and eat like that necessarily.
Yeah, well, the micro nanoplastics worries me, because as a cardiologist, to see the remarkable study of these microplastics in the artery, uh, e inducing, vicious inflammation locally, and then a 4 to 5-fold higher rate of heart attacks and strokes, in the follow-up of a couple of years. This was studied to me, there are others, but that really took the plastics worry to the highest level, and we're not doing enough to try to reduce that in our air and our water supply and whatnot. So, what you're bringing up is central in that our inequalities, that is, the people who have the worst exposure, air pollution,
Hmm.
microplastics, forever chemicals, these people, the ultra processed foods, they need help. They
Hmm.
need, of all the folks, they're the ones that have the highest burden of this. So we have to really work on that, and that's not been part of the uh, longevity
Hmm. No.
mainstream. It's all
Right.
about catering to the affluenza,
Mhm.
which are
Right.
the people who don't need this the most.
Mhm.
It's the people who are, in the lowest
100%.
socioeconomic, category that are the ones who are most to benefit.
Yeah, one of the things I spent a lot of time talking about inequality, actually, which is, I think I interviewed a doctor who's working on obviously CRISPR and sickle cell anemia, and she said, if Elon Musk got sickle cell anemia, you'd be sure this would be a very inexpensive process, right? And it's about $2 million. It's very expensive, and eventually it won't be. But one of the things I kept stressing them is that really, like, everyone's like, "What's the answer?" I'm like, "Don't be poor." And they're like, "That's not a good answer." I'm like, "I'm sorry I can't sell you a supplement." But really, that's one of the biggest dip in longevity has been among those who are getting killed by obesity, with processed foods in polluted areas with enormous amount of stress. Homelessness is a health issue, right? And
No question.
which
No
is
question
it,
about
if
that.
you think of it that way, then it's economic to me. So every episode we get an expert to send us a question. Let's hear yours.
Hi, I'm Amy LaRocca, the author of How to Be Well. My question for Dr. Eric Topol has to do with the information that last week the American Heart Association issued new dietary guidelines that directly contradict the dietary guidelines that were issued by Robert Kennedy. And given that so many doctors have their own proprietary lines of supplements and protein powders and other nutritional products, where in the world are Americans, people meant to look for safe, reliable health and nutritional advice to increase and improve their health spans?
Yeah, well, that's a great one because firstly, the American heart, as you might imagine, got it right. They actually had evidence-based guidelines about diet as opposed to what was done through the RFK Jr. and HHS. So if you want to follow where there's the
Explain
facts,
the difference between them. Between
yeah.
what
So
RFK said what?
RFK is, been advocating, uh, well, fat, the wrong oils, raw milk. I mean, stuff that's just, Looney Tunes. Now, some of it is right. That is, we want to foster the high consumption of fruits and vegetables and plant-based, but to have meat, red meat, which is advocated by HHS, is
Mhm.
wrong. It's okay to have red meat, but it should be infrequent rather than something that you should have at the top of a food pyramid, right? So some things are just completely unfounded in the current, hopefully short term US HHS, whereas the American Heart went through all the data, and that guidelines piece is well done, and it sets the record straight. The problem, of course, in general, I mean, you brought up some of the people
Mhm.
like Brian Johnson, and
Mhm.
then there's Gary Brecka, and all these
Mhm.
people, and a lot of these are very close to RFK and having a effect even on him is that they have ideas that are not substantiated by any evidence. And this is, of course, really unfortunate. But you can tell that the basis for their ideas are things that they're selling typically. And so that's where you really eliminate the lack of evidence combined with, oh, you can buy this supplement or you get this peptide or whatever. Then you already know that you stay away because it's just not going to help you to follow a person or a group that's working in a fact-free world. And we have a lot of really good evidence for these things.
Yeah, the American Heart Association basically said to eat a Mediterranean diet heavy on legumes, fruits, and vegetables, whole foods, and light on animal proteins. Get your protein through fish or other, spinach, or and your fiber through whole foods, like an avocado, for example. People don't realize how full of fiber an avocado is, for
Oh,
example.
yeah, yeah, fiber maxing, that's good. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, great. And yeah, protein, great from fish, obviously many other great sources, yogurt, tofu. So there's so many great foods out there that provide the kinda ideal, intake that is anti-inflammatory. And
Hmm.
we have randomized trials for the
Hmm.
Mediterranean or Mediterranean-like diet. We have huge cohorts followed for 20 plus years that show the people that have the greatest health span are the people that are following a very healthy diet. So this is there's pretty much this is incontrovertible. But what's happened is that we have some actors who are trying to subvert what the evidence shows.
Right, right, in order to sell things. I mean, I did a long interview with Brian, and I said, You are a study of one, which mean it's meaningless." He's like, "I'm just sharing it." I mean, "It doesn't matter." I was like, "It doesn't matter what your experience is." It was an interest. It was somewhat sad, though, because of his obsessive,
It's sad,
measurements.
but you know what's really bad about this, Kara? So, for example, he and Atia and so many others they were on the rapamycin leaderboard. How much rapamycin they take? They all had different doses. Well, then they don't. It's kind of like when the error is in a newspaper, you never see the error. Well, these people stopped taking their rapamycin because they were getting a lot of infections. No surprise, because it's a very potent blocker of our immune system. And so here you go. This is going to extend your health span, your lifespan. No data in people, and you have these influencers who got everybody onto this rapamycin kick. All the bro folks. Then this is a typical thing where then they stop taking it because they have all these side effects, but all these people are already hooked.
Yeah. 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 So we've known, what's really important is to understand how the problem is the answers are very basic and simple and inexpensive. And so it's not a quick fix. And I think is an element of quick fixiness that people desperately need. And it's the same thing with diet, right? It's pretty basic in terms of how you change your lifestyle.
Yeah, I mean, there's another dimension to this that I'm sure you're on it, which is getting unnecessary tests. This is also heavily promoted, whether it's a total body MRI or hundreds and hundreds of blood tests and on and on. And this is another part of that um, no evidence, but I do it, and you come to my clinic, and I'll do all these things, and so
I went
this
to
is
one.
oh
Yeah.
gosh, yeah.
I
So
was like,
this
what do
is
you need this to know for? Why is this information helpful to me? Now,
yeah,
it
and
sometimes works. My brother was a doctor, went to, speaking of cardiology, hadn't had a calcium test. Turned out he had one when he went into Medicare, and he had huge blockage, the widowmaker blockage, essentially. And it was great. That was a great test to get. And he removed it. Then he was fine. Then he just had the surgery, which was really quite less invasive than it's ever been. Really astonishing
with the stent,
situation.
right,
Right.
right.
So I think
But
people are hoping for those ideas that you find
yeah, the
something
problem is
drastic.
when you get add to the real data, particularly for the total body MRI, and there are ways to assess a coronary artery non-invasively better than just getting a calcium score. But you wind up the
They did a
balance
second
is
one.
yeah, the balance about this is that more people are hurt right now. We
Mhm.
don't have any evidence that there's a net positive,
Gain.
and on all these rabbit holes of
Mhm.
chasing down incidental findings that are spurious.
Mhm.
So this is a real problem because that goes hand in hand with the supplements and the
Mhm.
peptides. It's all part of that mix.
Explain how people are hurt by these tests, besides having way too much fucking information, like, that you don't need.
I've had patients with total body MRI who found a pulmonary lung nodule. Then they had a biopsy eventually, and then they had a collapsed lung, and they had to be in the hospital with a chest tube. I've had patients who had a liver
Mhm.
nodule,
Mhm.
which actually turned out to be a benign cyst, but in the
Mhm.
process of a biopsy, almost bled to death. So
Right.
you can have when this leads to getting tissue to find out what it is that you never really wanted to know in the first place, you can have pretty severe, potentially even life-threatening consequences. No less big expense and big anxiety.
Yeah, it's like a bad facelift. So, which I've seen many on some of these guys. But let's talk about real biotech interventions, because, as you said, astonishing high tech breakthroughs in the biomedical area, and they're transforming our approaches to diagnostics, for example. You've talked about how it could propel the biggest transformation in the history of medicine. Talk about how important AI, for example, will be in discovery.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we'd had AI when GLP-1 drugs were they're getting legs, but the
Hmm.
problem is we didn't, and it took
Hmm.
25 years
Right.
when it started out as a diabetes drug to
Hmm.
become an obesity drug. Had we
Hmm.
had AI back then, we would have said, "Oh, hey, test this for obesity." But now we do have AI, and we're seeing drugs that are truly discovered by AI. And, we have some that are at pretty advanced clinical trials now, for example, to get rid of scarring of tissue, which we never thought would be possible. I mean, in medicine, we thought if it's scarring, it's done, and we're seeing drugs starting to crop up in late trials. That is, they've already passed, they're safe, and they may wind up having lots of efficacy in areas that were not envisioned previously. So
Right.
that's led to some people like Demis Hassabis to say,
Mhm.
we're going to cure all the diseases. I
Right.
have a different look on this. My thought is we are going to have a big jump and speed, breadth in drug discovery, but I call them prev meds. They're not going to be treatment medications. They're going to be preventive medications. So,
Right,
for
which you don't
example,
even know you got it in the first
yeah.
place.
So,
Right.
the GLP-1 story is an exemplar, but
Mhm.
what if you had drugs that could really knock down brain inflammation so you
Mhm.
never got Parkinson's or Alzheimer's?
Right, right.
And, we have many candidates in the pipeline now that we didn't
Mhm.
have before. So
Right.
there's a gold rush with AI for drug discovery. And it isn't just even to discover new molecules, it's to
Mhm.
be able to go high velocity and get
Right,
the right.
quickly. I
Yeah.
interviewed Reed Jobs about it because
Oh,
he's
yeah.
more than
Yeah.
he's a terrific guy, and one of the things he's working on is hepatitis to prevent liver issues, which leads to cancer, but you never get the hepatitis in the first place, you never get the cancer in the second place, so some of the which seems very promising to me. But explain say, one of the things you talk about, the GLP-1s should have been studied much earlier, well, and they have potential life-changing potential beyond weight loss, which is a good thing too, in some ways. Talk about a counter argument to any of this, because once patients, for example, with GLP-1 stop taking Wegovy or Ozempic, and then now there's pills coming out, which will be more on a maintenance schedule without the shot required or the refrigeration. It is a lifetime commitment, very similar to a statin, for example. Um, uh, Talk about the idea of how you keep people on these kind of things that can be life-changing and helpful for other diseases.
Yeah, so I don't like forever drugs. And as you mentioned, statins, blood pressure medicines are examples of that. And so we don't need to add another forever drug if we can avoid that. Right now, we don't have a good mechanism to wean people completely. But I actually think that that will be possible in the future, that we don't have to have them on, high doses of GLP-1. So we have these now 2 pills that are, like, the injectables, but not quite as potent, but they're
They're from
peptides
they're
made
from
in.
Eli Lilly and Novo Nordisk.
Right, and they're both peptides that are packed into a pill with very hard to get eke out much out of that, but there are pills, low cost, small molecules, can be manufactured at scale, where the actual cost is pennies. So we're going to get the cost way down, and that will make it a global for all people, not just for those who can afford it. And then the next thing is, can we get to a strategy, whether it's a lower dose small molecule pill or some
Mhm,
other way that we can get people so that maybe they're taking it, but much lower quantities or not at all. We know, for example, the muscle mass that you lose when you lose
mhm,
weight. There are a lot of these companies are vested in these muscle building
mhm,
adjuncts, but
mhm.
actually, if you do strength training while you're
Right,
taking these drugs,
combination.
yeah,
I
you
end up
don't.
interviewing a woman who lost several hundred pounds, started off as an obesity drug, but then they gave her a whole program of nutrition, teaching how to cook correctly, and is combine it with exercise, and so it creates the 3 things together are what's critical, I think, in strength training,
Absolutely.
of
So,
course.
I think we're going to learn about this in the future, because the idea that it expanded now to many other indications that people would take it, we have to figure out a longer term strategy. The companies that are the duopoly, if you will, they don't
Mhm,
really have a great motivation to wean people from the
mhm.
drug, but
No.
we do. I mean,
Right.
if we can get away with keeping the weight off or having the sustained benefit of the inflammation in the body, that'd be great. I should add, though, there are many other candidates in the pipeline that have similar effects on the immune system and inflammation, that we might turn to those as a longer term maintenance strategy. They're just not as far along in the whole
Right,
process.
right. You wrote an article in your Ground Truth Substack explaining why all mammograms should incorporate AI. Talk about the use of AI mammograms lead to improved accuracy and how long it will take AI just incorporated, but all diagnostics. Now, I know there's been some, like, one of the tech people are like, well, no more radiologists. I'm like, no. Again, they're always so all or nothing on everything. And I'm like, it's an aid, it's a tool. So talk about incorporating it in mammograms, for example.
Yeah, so this is frustrating because we now have 3 different AIs that should be part of every mammogram. So every woman should have, for example, the better detection, because we know from the National Cancer Institute that 20% of breast cancers are missed by mammograms today. And AI picks those up and then
Hmm.
some.
Yeah.
So it increases the yield by about almost 30%.
Hmm.
Then the next one is that we have if a normal mammogram in a woman,
Hmm.
well, what about the risk in the next 3 to 5 years? And we have an FDA cleared AI to do that. Then we also have one that picks up heart disease risk from the breast artery calcification very accurately, to say that, oh, this woman has a very high risk for heart disease, which would often be not even in the awareness of that woman. So we have 3 AI tools, and almost no women in the United States are having the advantage of these, and the only one that they are getting exposed to in this RadNet network, they have to pay out of pocket $40 to get the AI initial interpretation, which isn't the other 2 AIs. So
Mhm.
it's frustrating because we've iced this. The data are
Mhm.
clear, the FDA approvals are out there,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
we're not incorporating in the medical practice. And this is where a lot of people, there's a backlash to AI out there
Mhm.
in the public,
Mhm.
but they
Right.
don't realize is there are a lot of good things that AI can bring to
Correct.
us,
Yep.
but we're
Yep.
not bringing that in,
Right, exactly. No,
Yeah.
exactly. The thing, but that's because they promise them as an all solver. The same thing
Right.
with supplements. Like some supplements are fine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, let's talk about the future of aging by some of the structural and institutional barriers, which you just brought up, preventing the expansion of Healthspan. Many of the ways we alter the pace of aging carry a serious risk of cancer. Explain the connection to cancer and how you weigh the positives and negatives when you think about that.
Well, I mean, I think we know that the risk of cancer is there's a lot of preventable aspects to it, and we reviewed now lifestyle factors. We also know that the immune system is a big driver if when it starts to lose its protection as we get older. That's when the ability for a cancer to develop and spread in our body is makes us so much more vulnerable. So we have to counter that. And the way we're going to do that in the future, which we never had before, what's amazing about this, Kara, is here it is 2026, and we have no test to say your immune system is healthy or it's down, you're vulnerable. And that's something that we're on the window of having, not only through an immune clock, a piece of aging of your immune system, which will someday be routinely available, but now we also have this thymus that is the gland that everybody thought was involuted and became fatty and worthless after our teenage years. Well, it turns out when you do AI of the thymus, you find out that even people in their 70s and older have some of them have intact thymus. And guess what? They also have intact health span. So
Hmm.
the point here is that we're right on the brink of
Hmm.
being able to say, particularly when people are 50 and older, your immune system's starting to show signs of
Where?
vulnerability. So we're
Hmm.
going to give you a vaccine
Hmm.
to amp it up, or we're going to
Right.
do this or that to amp it up because we have so many ways to rev up the immune system that we've learned for cancer
Hmm.
treatments, so many
Hmm.
ways. And that's something that's in a high velocity of new dimensions of how we can rev up an immune system in people who have cancer to treat them. But now we have these 2 ways and probably more subsequently. If we start to get on top of the immune system before a person has cancer, and get them like, for example, the shingles vaccine has had an incredible impact to reduce Alzheimer's, unexpected,
I had
because
mine. There's two
yeah,
of them, folks.
because
Yeah.
it revs up your immune system,
Hmm.
not because it works against the virus. Well, the same thing for cancer, and these could be generic vaccines that are not against a
Hmm.
virus, but rather vaccine that's just trying to get your immune system
Right.
amped up. So
Yeah.
that's where I think we're going to see some big advances,
Hmm.
and it's just because the system that lets cancer take hold in our body and allow it spread, we didn't have a way to measure it. And that's one of the aspects of the excitement in the science of aging is
Right.
understanding and
Exactly.
respecting, and also, this whole idea that maybe we could keep the thymus healthy in everyone throughout
Hmm.
our lives.
Which would
Wow.
provide enormous benefit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, health inequality, as you said, is a huge problem in the US and globally. You note the lack of universal health care in the US is holding us back, which I could not. Korea has universal health care. They're so healthy in that regard. A lot of preventative stuff. Research shows that rich people not only live longer, they get more healthy years after age 50 than poor people. This should not come as a surprise to anyone. But the lack of universal health care in this country, to me, it's another thing I point to. I'm like, how you want to extreme longevity? Universal health care, basics. And then rich
Yeah.
people can pay for more of the bells and fucking whistles if they feel like it. But what would be a fair healthcare system look like in America? If you could wave your wand, what would it be?
Well, it would be where insurance companies are not ruling the roost and only concerned about the 1 year outcomes of their employees, of big employers, or the actual direct consumers that are, that cover. So we not only have lack of universal health care, but we have such a perverse incentive that we don't have a country where we're trying to promote and prevent diseases, promote Healthspan. Whereas other countries like the UK and most of the just about every other uh, high income country around the world, their incentive is reduce the health burden of chronic diseases, age related especially, and reduce the economic burden. So they go hand in hand. Whereas here we have a malincentive to do that. That even transcends the lack of a universal health system because we have no way that preventing these diseases, uh, besides the fact that people could benefit,
Hmm.
the financials don't click, and
Hmm.
so we're at a disadvantage. And just as you were saying about vaccines, we could see the prevention story unfold at other high income countries because they get it. The investment for prevention and detection and forecasting is so easy to see the benefits. Whereas
For
here,
people who don't know, our country pays double healthcare, $13,000 a person versus 6 in most developed
oh,
countries.
right, right,
It's
exactly.
crazy amounts of
No,
money
what we
to
get
be
for that,
sicker, and we're
to-
sicker.
totally. And we're going to keep that up unless we start to get a new mindset of preventing diseases, which starts with prediction and finding high risk people. But if we don't break through these barriers that are holding us back with our system of the financial coverage, that is not the last thing is for prolonging health span, which is a multi-year
Mhm.
story, then we're not going to make the advances that our others will certainly be able to achieve.
What do you imagine has to happen? How do you get there? 'Cause there's been multiple attempts to do it. It's not as if Hillary Clinton was, digging the ditch on that one many years ago, but
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately, the lobbying power of these forces that are holding us back is so strong that we haven't been able to override that. Um, it probably is only going to become achievable when we see whether it's some systems within the U.S., let's say at the Kaiser or
Mhm.
Veterans Health, or more likely other countries, markedly reduce their healthcare costs from prevention. That
Mm.
will maybe be the stimulus ultimately in the years ahead that we better get on this. But right now, there's no attention being paid to this potential here, but, having been an advisor to the NHS and other countries, I know it's happening elsewhere because they have the great interest in keeping their whole population as healthy as long as possible.
So I want to ask you the last question. You emphasize both the power of evidence-based medicine and the risks of hype and pseudoscience. And at the same time, we're seeing a growing skepticism toward modern medicine in the U.S. and distrust of experts and institutions. Now, that may be waning down, and it's one of these things we go through. But how do you think we can distinguish between genuinely transformative advances like AI-driven medicine and GLP-1 drugs and the kinds of unproven interventions that gain traction in the wellness space? But talk about the distrust of science and what that might do. How do we regain that?
Yeah, well, of course, we had it before COVID. We started to, have this fabricated data that led to vaccine questions and autism, which was completely bogus. And then it was amplified through COVID. And unfortunately, the science community didn't stand up. It
Hmm.
led this orchestrated, financed, backed minority
Hmm.
to make serious holes, and there were missteps of public health agencies and the government. So it just all added during the pandemic to take the questioning of the medical establishment at the highest level, really a disregard, a diss that these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. What do you mean expert? I do my own research. So we got to this height and hopefully we're
And
starting
the
to
medical
get it.
establishment has plenty to blame in terms
Oh,
of being high-handed and not being open to
yeah,
a number of things.
listening to the concerns, that is, having respect for the doubting folks out there and trying to provide the evidence that their concerns are not real or they should be balanced by, for example, benefits and risks. But anyway, so we're still, not that long from the COVID pandemic days where it's at height. And a lot of these people have been now empowered at the highest levels of our government agencies. So that helps perpetuate it. So in the meantime, the medical establishment has still not gotten its voice. The likelihood of somebody in science and medicine to be trying to ante up, be on social media and getting good information out there, it's a tiny minority. It's so crowded out by the others. So we haven't put a dent in this. And in order for us to change this, to turn the tide, we got to see a lot more people in the medical community who are credible, who are
Hmm.
not selling something, who are
Right.
going to stand up and get the facts out so that people know. And we
Hmm.
also need compelling data. So
Right.
we're not going to get AI into the mainstream until the data is incontrovertible, powerful, replicated independently. But when it is, we can't keep poking holes and questioning it because it's really going to become the standard of care. That's just one example. So, we have, unfortunately, so many conflicts out there with people who are, all these tests and supplements
Hmm.
and peptides and whatnot, and they're getting the audience.
Yep.
They
Well,
have they say, "Oh, we have the secrets that the doctors won't tell you," and don't wait for this stuff to get approved by the medical establishment because it works, The rapamycin is kind of the prototype story of that, and, I think hopefully people are gonna learn that that's not the answer. The answer is, have the evidence, um, restore the trust in the medical community, get
right.
more of doctors and people in life science to
Hmm.
be activists,
Talk about it. And
talk
yeah,
about it,
absolutely.
write
Well,
about it.
guess what? I have a billboard, two billboards in Times Square, and I'm going to show off people like you. That's what I'm doing.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
sick of this shit. I'm
Yeah,
sick.
well, me too. I'm so glad you're on it. I mean,
Yeah,
I can't
you'll
wait to
like it.
watch your
Yeah.
series because I
I
think
talk to
what you've done
actual
is
experts. Yeah.
wow.
I'm sick
Yeah.
of it. I'm sick of it. I was like, guess what? I'm going to play your game and I'm going to kick your ass just like I always did before. I was right about the tech moguls. Now I'm going to be right about this and
Well, and
show off the real.
the bro science,
Yeah.
is
Oh, they're so
whether it's Joe
tiresome.
Rogan, Elon
Oh,
Musk,
yeah. Yeah.
Huberman, all these people,
Yeah.
uh, this is a big part of this,
Yeah.
they're an underpinning of all of it.
100%. I would agree with you. Anyway, Dr. Topol, I really appreciate it. We're going to be doing a lot more, and I'm going to be doing a lot more because I think it's a huge opportunity to make people healthy, save money, have economic impact, and have everybody live longer instead of just 14 men from Silicon Valley. So I really appreciate it. All
Oh,
right.
thank you. Really
Thank you.
enjoyed the
And
talk with you.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Want career advice from Kara Swisher? Now's your chance. We're doing a special episode and I want your questions. Send a video to on@voxmedia.com and you might be featured. I can't wait to see what you've got. Ask any question. I'll try to answer it. Today's show was produced by Christian Castro-Russell, Michelle Eloy, Catherine Millsop, Megan Burney, and Kaylin Lynch. Nishat Kurwa is Vox Media's executive producer of podcasts. Special thanks to Madeline LaPlante-Doobie and Eamon Whalen. And our theme music is by Trackademics. If you're already following the show, you're on the path to a Healthspan expansion. If not, enjoy the longevity lifespan circus. Actually, they're grifters. Thanks for watching. See you on Monday.